Hello! Today we're going to go over how to load a contract in Coupa. So before we get into the nitty-gritty details of how to actually put a contract in Coupa, there's a couple things you have to have before you start the process. So to be clear, contracts should come to you in one of two ways. Either your contract was routed in Coupa for approval, and it was attached to a requisition, and we call those CRFs, or contract routing forms. And if you do have one of those, you are going to need the routing form and the fully executed agreement that was attached to the routing form. Now, that's the first way a contract might come to you. The second way is, let's say there's a really old contract that was executed a long time ago, or it was signed and it didn't go through this approval process inside of Coupa. That would be a non-routed contract in my terms. And what you need to load those is you need the fully executed agreement, and you won't have a routing form, so you will need what we call a contract number generator. So your property should have one of these. If you don't know where it is, please talk to your contract uploaders. This is where all of the non-routed agreements are kind of tracked and how they're assigned contract numbers. Okay, and we'll get into the contract number later. So for the example today, we're actually going to be using the contract number generator for Blackhawk, and we're going to be loading a contract that was executed about 10 years ago. And so in this case, because it wasn't routed on a requisition, I don't have this number, which is part of the contract number when we load it into Coupa. So I'm actually going to use the contract generator to provide myself a contract number when I load it. So if you don't have this form, there will be one saved on the Teams account for sourcing. But if you don't know who your contract uploader group is, it's pretty easy to find. You'll just go into any routed CRF, scroll to the bottom, run your mouse over the 82 or the property contract uploader group, and then you can see it gives you approval group members. That's who on your property has the ability to upload contracts. So you can always go to one of those people and they should know where your contract number generator file is. So before we get started, those are kind of the two methods of routing, one internal to Coupa, one external, and those are the documents or things you need before you start to actually upload a contract in Coupa. So the next thing is you're going to go to the suppliers tab and you're going to go to the contract section. There's a couple things before you get into it. Read the contract, because you are going to have to put some details in Coupa that come straight from the agreement. So you're going to have to read the agreement to be able to do that. So before you even start this process, once you have your CRF or you have your uploader page to create a number based on what kind of contract it is, you are going to want to read the contract so you can upload it appropriately. Once you've read it, you're going to come to suppliers, you're going to go to contracts, and then you're going to hit the create button. So the process today is going to be new contracts. If you have an addendum or a change order or an extension, those are done differently, and there's actually another video that goes over how to modify a contract in Coupa to add an addendum to it. But this is how to start one from scratch. So you're going to hit create, and then it's basically just plugging in the details. Okay, so this supplier, pretty easy. Today we're going to be loading a contract from Ecolab. And so there's three, so you're going to have to know which division. If you are using a vendor like what we're doing today, you're going to have to know which division this is. And so we're actually the main Ecolab division here today, so that's what I'm going to select. The contract name. So the contract name always starts with your property code. So in this case, it's ABH. Your other contract should have that. So if you don't know what it is, you can always go to a past contract and find it. And then the rest of the name actually comes from the contract itself. So in this case, this is a mineral system rental agreement. So I'm going to come here and say, basically, type in the name of the contract. Okay. So the contract number, that's what we went over earlier when we were talking about if it was routed in Coupa or if it wasn't. So in this particular case, if it was routed in Coupa, you want to start it with the property name, and you want to put the year it was routed and approved. So if the CRF document, right, that requisition that we know, was started and approved in 2019, we want to put 19. Let's say it broaches a year, so it was started in 2019, but it didn't get approved till the 2020. You want to use when it was started, okay, when it was routed. So 2019, and then we want to use the requisition number. So if this contract had come out of Coupa, we would go to the requisition and we would actually use this requisition number to end our agreement. Just like that. So that is what a contract number looks like if your agreement was routed in Coupa. If your agreement is not routed in Coupa, like this one, that's where the contract number generator comes from. And so this is my contract number. So it's going to be Blackhawk-19-0026. And in my generator spreadsheet, I'm going to type in Ecolab mineral agreement, right? Just so everyone knows what it is. And then this is the number I'm going to use for my contract number. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm basically going to get rid of this rec number and put in my contract number. So that's how you generate a contract number. Now, description, I'm basically just going to give a brief description of what this contract is, right? So this is a pool and spa maintenance agreement. It helps that you spell better. So I'm going to put just a brief description in there, not a big deal. Before I get into the details here, I'm actually going to jump over to pricing and terms. So this is where, if any of this information is in your agreement, this is really where you want to update that information. So is there a minimum spend? Are you required to spend a minimum amount of money? Right? Maximum spend. Are you limited to a specific amount of money in this contract? Payment terms, and then shipping terms. So you definitely want to fill these out if they make sense, right? And you want to make sure that it matches your agreement. So if there is special terms, if there is special payment practices, if there is really anything that kind of doesn't match the default settings here, that's where you want to fill these out. In the agreement we're completing today, there are not net terms listed, and there are not, there isn't a minimum or maximum spend, right? So this, it's not like dictated minimum or maximum, all right? So we're going to leave most of these blank, but if your contract contains any of these details, you do want to make sure you fill them out. So we're going to jump back here, and we're going to say status start. So when did this agreement start? Okay. And so the start date can kind of be a little confusing based on the agreement. You really just want to do your best. A lot of times, if there is not a dictated start date in the agreement, it's the day that it's executed, right? So a lot of them will say like this agreement starts on the day it's executed. And so that is actually true of this agreement. It started on the day it was executed. And so the execution date of this agreement is actually 9/2/2009. Okay. And so that's the day it started, and then the day it expired. So the day it expired originally was 1 year from the agreement. So it expired on 9/1/2009. So that's actually what I'm going to put in here right now, because I'm showing you guys how to enter a brand new agreement. Here on the other video, it actually shows this same contract and how to go back and modify it to show the extension or the addendum or a change order of agreement. So this is just the brand new one. So it ended a year after, and it's always the day before. So if your contract lasts for a year, it always ends the day before, because it's always 365 days, not 366 days, just to let everybody know. So the owner of the contract, this is where you actually pick the stakeholder. In this case, since this contract was executed so long ago, I'm going to pick the department owner. or the department director or the department leader. And I'm going to change the department number to the actual department that owns this contract, which is facilities. If this was a contract that had been routed through the CRF process, I would pick the requested by person, and I would pick the requested by department. Okay, so that's what I would put in here if it had been routed through the system. So there's no supplier account number, currency and advantage contractor stagnant, project number, we do not fill this out, only for CapEx, type of contract. So this is where I can actually fill out kind of who it belongs to and what type of agreement it is. So it could be an NDA, it could be a maintenance agreement, it could be an entertainer. So this is where I'm going to actually pick maintenance agreement. And then, is this a lease? So this is a really important question, because we actually have to like point and report leases special. And so this is actually a rental agreement of this equipment. So that is a lease. And so I'm going to pick lease here. And then description of services. So what is this? So we did put a brief description here, like pool and spa maintenance agreement, but this is where we're going to put a little bit more meat of the agreement. So this is a monthly maintenance. Sorry about my spelling. For the care and equipment for spa and pool, chemical. Okay, and then we're going to move to key contract terms. So this is where reading the agreement is really important. So key contract terms, how it terms, if there's any like special language. So if you have to give 60 days notice, if you can't term the contract, if it's a prepay agreement. So this is really where you want to put a lot of like the key operating, like important things that are really like you want to be able to just glance at that information and have a good understanding of how this contract is going to affect your property. So in this particular case, I am going to put auto renewal, right? Because we know that based on this contract and the fact that it's super old, executed back in 2009, that this has been auto renewing for the past 10 years. So I'm definitely going to put auto renewal, and then if we don't want it to renew, I'm going to put the dates. So like 60-day cancellation from the expires date. So as it renews, we have 60 days before to give notice, right? So if it's in August, I'm not going to be able to cancel this because I've missed my 60-day window. Is there exclusivity? That's a big other thing to put here. So am I only allowed to use this person? Is this person the only person that can perform within a month? That kind of thing. Exclusivity is really important. And then state of governance is also super important here. So like if something were to happen and this contract were to go to court, or it would be, kind of argued about, what state laws govern this agreement. And so that's always a big thing to put in here. And it's usually in some of the information in your contract. Sometimes it's not, though. So just to let you know, if you are attaching the Penn national addendum, the state of governance will be the state that you select in that agreement. So it is whatever is in that agreement, and you're supposed to fill that out as you attach the addendum. In this particular one, there is not a state of governance listed, and so that's not something I can include in this agreement, but that's always a good thing if you have it and you know it to include in contract key terms, okay? So the initial contract amount, how much is this contract worth? So this contract is worth $1,599. That's the annual fee. And the first year, they charged us a $625 installation fee. So that's actually both of those added together. So the initial contract amount is $2,224. Okay, it's not a big contract. And And so that's what we're going to do, current contract amount. So when we're putting in a new agreement, the current contract amount should be what the initial signed contract value is. So if this contract is a year and it's $2,224, so this initial contract should always match this the first time you put it in. Later, when you watch the other video on addendums, that's where the differences in these two come into play. But whenever you're putting in a new contract, they're going to be the same. New contract, so no change order details. Termination type, perpetual, auto renewal, or fixed. This is an auto renewal. Contract terms, it was good for 12 months when it was originally signed. And then contract date of execution. A lot of times you'll find the date of execution and the start date are the same, like we talked about earlier. So in this particular case, it was signed in 2009. And then contract signatory. So this was signed by John Schober, which is not a person that works here anymore. So I can't select from a drop down, but I still can type his name here. And then, is this active, expired, or closed? So technically this contract is still active because it has been auto renewing. But if you are entering an old contract that is no longer good, you can select closed here. You do not always have to enter active agreements. So in this particular case, it is still active, but you don't have to necessarily always enter active agreements. So related, parent, child, contract type, order guides, etc. So if this referenced a national agreement or something like that, I would be able to select what it is if it referenced another agreement. And then these I actually skip because they're for different types of contracts, none of which we will be entering. Documents, this is where I actually enter or I drop in the copy of the fully executed agreement. And so I can always type in additional details and stuff here, but this is where I type in or I drop in the file. And then I'm going to come down to configuration and alerts, and I'm going to go straight over here. I'm going to skip all of these. And then I'm going to go straight to content group, and I'm actually going to assign the property that in the content group that this agreement applies to. So it's a really good way to kind of consolidate, make it cleaner for your end users that are looking through contracts because they can only see the ones that apply to their property. It also is a great filtering tool. So if you want to see if you can filter using this field once everything is entered. So once we're done, we are going to hit save and publish. So as a side note, if I hit save and publish and something is wrong, so I've like screwed something up, I didn't type in details correctly, you guys notice I misspelled a couple things. If there's misspellings here, if I hit publish, it's done, it's published, it's out there. When I go back in, that is only going to be to attach an addendum or a change order. I can't modify published agreements and I can't delete them. If you need to delete an agreement, so if something is just entered incorrectly and it needs to be deleted, you have to contact eProcurement for that. So anyone can send an email to eProcurement and tell them to delete a contract, and then they can delete it for you and you can start over. So I would recommend take a minute, look this over, and ensure that everything is entered correctly, and then you want to hit save and publish. So there's one more step after you save and publish, because we know everyone double checked it, so we're not worried about details being incorrect, but we do want to go back and add some alerts. Okay, and so we're going to go back and we're going to find this contract and we're going to select it, and I'm going to actually scroll all the way to the bottom. And in the alert section, this is actually where I can put in alerts to kind of prompt specific people for all kinds of things, okay? And so it's not just, so instead of me running this large report that I have to look through all the time, I can actually go in and add an alert here, and it will send a prompted communication to whomever this alert is for. So in this case, I really would like to know when this is going to expire again. right? So this has been auto renewing for about 10 years. And so I really want to make sure that we're looking at it and we're recreating that SPO, right, every year. And so I want to know 120 days in advance. So we know from the details earlier, this is going to, we have 60 days prior to the end of the agreement to cancel it if we need to. So 120 days gives me 60 days to do research, to get with the stakeholder, to potentially send it out to bid before I have to give notice that I want to continue this or not. So you can pick different days here. You can also pick before or after. So if I want an update on this contract 120 days after, and I don't want to have to remember, I can do that. So I want before expiration date. Now notice lots of dates here, lots of drop downs here. You can get a huge amount of information from this alert section, and you can give alerts to pretty much anyone for anything based on the fields. In this particular case, I would like an alert, so I can select myself. I can also select groups. So like if I want all the buyers on property to get an alert, or who's ever a part of that buyer group, I can select a group. So I can say, hey, I want all the property contract uploaders to know, and I can select that group as well. So there are ways so you can select groups or you can select individual persons. Once you have everyone selected that you want, you can add the alert, and then your alert will be right here, and it is days before or after, 120 days before the start date. Oh crap, that's not the one I wanted. So I can't edit it, I can delete it and start over. So it's going to delete that. I am going to say I want it 120 days prior to the expiration date, and I am going to tag myself. So it sends me an alert, and I'm going to add the alert. So that is how alerts are added, and that is the end. That is how you add a contract in Coupa.